Hello, evolutions. Genasi? Hold on. Word of God says Genasi. Genasi are a relative newcomer to the D&D scene, but in the short time they've been given, and without any particular spotlight in the books, they've surpassed species like Gnome, Aasimar, or Goliath and stand directly behind game staples like Halfwork. So how did they do it? What are they about? And more importantly, can we make them weird looking? Well, you're leaving this video with a brand new playable species based on them, so let's hope we manage. I'm Antonio D'Amico, this is Pointy Hat, and we're gonna take these genie-adjacent weirdos to some even weirder places in this brand new episode of D&D with a twist, Genasi edition. So when I think of Genasi, I think of Genasi are the species for those that pretend to waterbend in the shower and fans of overly simplistic magic systems. Genasi are themed around the elements, with the main four ones being the red one, the brown one, the blue one, and the one that people cannot agree on a color for. So how did that happen? Well, it has changed a bunch, but here's the gist. To understand Genasi, you gotta understand that D&D humans are basically sponges. This is never said outright, because that would be a thing only I would say, but I'm right. Basically, evidence suggests that D&D humans were never told to not pick up off of the street because they will pick up anything. The nicer, more Tolkien-esque way of saying this is that they seem to be uniquely predisposed to be changed by outside interference. In my own lore that I have in my own little head for my own little games, I make this into an actual human trait. But despite it being headcanon, it's 100% supported by actual D&D text. The reason why most tieflings, Aasimar, Genasi, all of those are human is because humans are so adaptable that their body will basically mold itself to a unique shape that depends on the pressure exerted on it by outside influences. As far as I can tell, and I ask my friends that speak Arabic to confirm, Genasi is not really an Arabic word. This is also why we can't agree on a pronunciation. The prevalent guess here is that the gen comes from genie, which makes you wonder why it's not Genasi, and nas, which means people in Arabic. The genie people, the Jeeple. Why genies? Well, Genasi are born from humans that thought that this was super hot. Love is love, I guess. Or, more interestingly to me, Genasi can happen when a human was born, grew up, was in the general vicinity of, drove by one time, a place suffused by a genie's magic, which is being exposed to a particular elemental energy. Let me tap the side. That's right, it's not just parentage that makes this happen. Prolonged exposure to a specific type of magic makes humans absorb that and creates Genasi. Interesting to me. See what I meant by human is sponge? But no matter how much you work on your Genasi character, you still need at least 3 other characters. You still need a group to play with. Or do you? How many stories do we have of adventurers striking out on their own? Of meeting new people in different places and leaving those people behind along with the scenery to meet other people striking out on more adventures all alone? If only you could do it on D&D. Well, you can! With obvious mimic! What am I talking about? I'm talking about D&D campaigns that you can play on your own! That's right, no group to play with, but they meet every blue moon. Obvious Mimic has got you covered. Their books are sort of written like a choose-your-own-adventure book, but you play with your own D&D character. You pick your own path through the interactive story, and you make choices, and those choices have consequences down the line. And is it just choices? No. There's combat, there's spellcasting, there's loot. You even level up, and they cater specifically to basically everyone. New players that want to try out D&D without the pressure of being thrust into a group, or seasoned veterans that want to try out a new character or haven't played D&D in a while. Even forever DMs that would like to play just one time. God. So if this sounds like a cool thing, and come on, it does, like what better gift for the DM in your life that you refuse to DM for than a whole adventure where they get to be the hero? Or for the D&D curious in your life that haven't had a chance to play yet? Well, if you think so, I have a code just for that. Use the code POINTYHAT10, all one word, to get 10% off. The link is right in the description of this video. First link, you can't miss it. And now that you have a brand new way to test out your Genasi, let's look at your options for those guys. Since there's a genie per elemental plane, we get 4 main Genasi. If we want to make our own, we gotta see what we're playing with. So, familiar, Genasi recap, now.
Human familiar.
Guess familiars don't get a Christmas break either. What kind of Genasi would you guys be? I'll be a work Genasi. Okay, before we get into the different ice cream flavors of Genasi, they all have abilities that are all the same for every type of Genasi, so let's look at them. All of them get dark vision. I'm gonna stop saying this because it's every species at this point. All of them have normal feet of speed, and since Mordenkainen Tome of Remixes, they can be small or medium. In the looks department, all Genasis look very different on account of the evolutionary stones you give them. They can look exactly like a human, I could be a Genasi. Or have a literal bonfire for hair. Your choice. They all kind of exhibit their element in one way or another. It's just sometimes more subtle than others. A cool little feature that disappeared from 5e is them having Zoldar. Your pronunciation guess is as good as mine. These were basically like RGB stripes that were pre-built into Genasi, like lines that glow, and they glow the color of their element. There was some amount of cultural significance to each Genasi's Zoldar, like it could identify them as like the son of someone specific, and there was even text of them hiding it through scarification to pass as human, which I think is really cool. 5e has sort of retired this, but some official arts still have them, so your choice. Aesthetically, the Zoldar are not for me. They read gamer mouse to me, but I do really like the cultural context of them. Like I like the scarification thing and like the parentage thing. I think that's cool. And that's all they have in common. Got that? Cool. On to the fun part. Genasi come in 4 main flavors. Which one is the American way? 4? Strawberry. Fire Genasi are associated with Ifriti, which are the meanie genies. They have a whole Hades from Hercules thing going on with like fire hair. Or, if you're different and not like the other players, black smoke. They also generally suffer from too hot to handle disease, and that their skin is like hot to the touch and it glows like an open flame. It's like that thing in Hades. The video game, not the Disney thing. Personality-wise, we are not getting inventive in the slightest. Whatever the cliche personality associated with the element is, that is what Genasi are said to be. So yes, Fire Genasi are said to be flamboyant, passionate, and aggressive. Florals in spring.
Groundbreaking.
Fire Genasi are sort of Latina worldwide belt coded. In terms of abilities, Fire Genasi get fire resistance, which is literally always good. You can go join the I have resistance to the most common damage type in the game club. Their signature ability is Reach into the Flame, which is a very 80s coded ability name. All Genasi get a version of this based on their evolutionary stone, and it gives them a cantrip and 2 spells, sometimes. We'll see. Fire Genasi get Produce Flame, mid, Burning Hands, pretty good, and Flame Blade, which is great. Burning Hands being such close range and Flaming Blade being Flaming Blade means that Fire Genasi are sort of pushed to be melee combatants of some sort. By the way, great on melee clerics with a decent save DC. Cookies and cream. Earth Genasi are associated with the Tao. I talked about this in my video on genies, but the Tao is wild. Like, it's insane to me that they have this thread of like taking Arabic words willy-nilly and putting them here, and then it's just the Tao. The Chinese thing? What? Earth Genasi come in 2 versions. 1, the boring version, which is the one where they just look rocky, like they're just gray and they need moisturizing really bad. And then there's the Steven Universe version where they look like amethysts and crystals and other things that you can buy at shops that smell too much of incense. Personality wise, once again, we're going for the pre-assigned personalities to the elements for these guys. Who came up with those? Anyway, can you guess? Yes, Earth Genasi are stoic, stubborn, and tough. Florals in spring. What I gather here is that Earth Genasi are sort of video game dads, the Kratos of the elemental wheel. Ability-wise, we get ignoring difficult terrain, but it's specified to be only on the ground or a floor. Like, I'm sure it's some sort of interaction with spider walk or climbing speed. You also get Blade Ward, which has been updated in the new PHB to not be as awful as it was before, because oh god was it bad before. But for the Earth Genasi, it was kind of better because you could cast it as a bonus action, so you could actually use it. You also get Pass Without a Trace, which is an insanely useful spell for everybody. Behind all the crusty skin of these guys hides a really all-rounder good build. Like, you could use this for basically any class. You do not get damage resistance though. Boo-hoo. Sea Salt Ice Cream. Water Genasi are associated with merit and yes, water energies. Yes, water is indeed wet. Oh, and we're back to Arabic, I guess. In the looks department, these guys look very different from other Genasi, and I've been saying Genasi all this time. Oops, these guys look different from other Genasi, and I really like that. You have your baseline boring hair made of water interpretation, which at least makes them very distinct from all the 5,000 watery races in D&D that all look the same. But in the same vein as the Earth Genasi's need for moisturizer, Water Genasi get a ton of skin conditions to differentiate them and make them unique. I'm gonna think about my own skin conditions like that. We get clammy skin, fish scale skin, and excessive perspiration. Just like me in high school. I thought this was a critical role invention, but no, it's such a cool little detail. Although I do see people picking this more for NPCs than for PCs. I don't know how many people out there have like the fantasy of playing someone that is just constantly sweaty. Personality wise, someone learned the word Mercurian and its vague connection with the sea, and that's why Water Genasi are all about mood changes, like they're really good at those. But the clumsy water theming for these guys stops here. They actually went ahead and did interesting personality traits, not just the water type personality trait. They're said to be particularly independent. Most of them leave their human parents behind ASAP. And apparently they love to feel special. Big main character syndrome happening here. To the point where they don't even hang out with that many Water Genasi or any I said Genasi again. They don't even like to hang out with other water Genasi because they make them feel less special. I think that that's really neat. Like, that's a really neat character choice. Make a diva water Genasi, cowards. Why are these guys the only ones allowed to have cool, distinct personality traits? In the abilities camp, we have acid resistance. I don't have the numbers, but is acid the least common damage type in the game? You barely see it. I guess if you pick this, have fun throwing yourself into a gelatinous cube. Anyway, it's not fire resistance, so they lose the race. You of course get amphibious, which is as useful as your DM wants it to be. And in terms of spells, you get acid splash, bad, and create and destroy water, situational. All in all, I hate to say this because they are the most fun to me, but these might be the worst set of abilities out of all the EV people. There's nothing here that is awful, like unusable, but even compared within the same species, these are the worst ones. It's just all either super niche or very DM dependent. If you want to play these but you're not sure, ask your DM how much water you're gonna encounter, or make yourself encounter a lot of water. Just beeline towards the nearest body of water now. And finally, marshmallow ice cream. Air Genasi are associated with the Jinn, which is not the genie. It is a genie, but it's not the genie, it's the Jinn, and bear the curse of being associated with the element that nobody can agree on a color for. Like, is it green? If you play a lot of JRPGs, it's green. Comment below what the color of air is. Is it purple? Is it green? Comment below. Fight amongst yourselves. Drive the hat's engagement. Anyway, because nobody can agree, Air Genasi get light blue. This particular thing is not based on anything. It's just because the Jinn get blue skin. But they also get unusually cool flesh, like Edward Cullen.
This is the skin of a killer, Bill.
If this is a character creator, the crazier side of the scale makes them have cloud hair. But like, in a fun twist, they could also have invisible Beyonce concert fan blowing at them constantly, like their hair is always floating in the wind. Personality-wise, they are independent and free-spirited. Florals in spring again. As to abilities, you get lightning resistance, which it's not fire, but it's better than acid. They also get unending breath, which means they can hold their breath forever. At first I was like, what is the difference between this and amphibious? But guys, can Air Genasi go to space? Can Air Genasi go into a bag of holding indefinitely? Mordenkainen made them able to be small. Think about it. In terms of spells, for some reason, these guys get 3 on top of being natural-born astronauts. These are some really good options. Shocking Grasp is a cantrip, which is super solid, although bad range. Featherfall, which someone needed to take, and you're not likely to use this more than once per long rest anyway. And Levitate as a spell, which can be incredibly useful in the hands of the right goblin evil player from hell. Probably the strongest set of spells here, like by a mile. Definitely better than what water gets. Okay, so those are all the Genasi. As in, all the Genasi in 5e. Older editions got creative.
Everybody's so creative.
These guys were called Para Genasi and came from 2 Genasi of different elements, loving each other very much. Or from the energies at the border between 2 elemental planes. We had Slime Time Live Genasi, Vape Nation Genasi, Elsa Genasi, Lava Girl Genasi, Dusty Musty Crusty Genasi, and Steampunk Genasi. I'm sure like some obscure ones in like 2e or something. Oh, and also we had one from a plane that is not an elemental plane. Which one? The Shadowfell? I had talked about them in the Genie video. We also had Elemental Tempests. This is, oh god, this is spell plague stuff. The Dark Times. Anyway, these are just Genasi that had 2 elemental manifestations instead of 1. Gee, Elemental Tempest, why does Mom Genie let you have 2? Whatever, this is an old meme. Anyway, I don't love these guys. They come a little bit too close to like half demon, half angel, twin crossbow, OC, do not steal for my liking. Thank you, Familiar. You're the sweetest ice cream of all. Don't call me that. Okay, we've looked at Genasi Pokemon types, a whole bunch of them, and I guess those are nice. But what if we gave Genasi a new twist? So, okay, hear me out here. I'm not the biggest fan of, like, elemental magic. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that there's anything intrinsically wrong with it at all, really. Plenty of media uses it. I just think that's kind of the problem. Plenty of media uses it. A whole lot. Look at how much B-roll we have. I don't think this is a problem intrinsic to elemental systems. And hell, maybe if they had gone for the 5 Asian elements, like wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, it would have been a little bit more interesting just by virtue of that just not being particularly explored in the West. But as it stands, I personally have seen enough of which acronym Avatar the Legend of the Flying type stuff. Not dissing anyone that loves these, just like any millennial, I like Avatar a normal amount. I've just seen my share. So what do we do to twist these guys up? Do we bring back Para Genasi? Well, to me that's more of the same, and you can definitely tell that some of these were made just because they had to. Like, sure, magma makes sense, ice makes sense, I'll even take stuff like dust, but you just cannot tell me that they would have made both steam and smoke Genasi if it wasn't because they just had to do all the elemental combos. follows. Besides, this channel is about making new stuff. I'm interested in taking Genasi in a different direction that respects their lore, but explores it in a wildly different way. Here's what I got. So Genasi are said to be born by a mortal getting creative with their choice of partner, or by a mortal, most often a human, being affected by magical elemental energies. We have text that explicitly says that Genasi can be created by being born, or gestated, I guess? Maybe if this happens in like your mom's womb? Close to a place where a powerful genie casts a powerful spell. That is a thing that can lead to Genasi popping out. Magic itself can affect and lead to the creation of these people. So, doesn't it stand to reason that this would not be a thing that happens only with elemental magic? Why would it be? What if an arch-wizard casts a very powerful spell? Could that lead to Genasi being born because of that same residual magical energy, but not tied to a specific element? Magic has a sort of like quasi-nuclear force, something that can affect people long after it's cast if the conditions are right, and the magic is powerful enough. I just love world building that includes details like that makes magic less of a skill set you can get by leveling up, but like an actual natural force with long-term ramifications. Isn't that cool? But wait, if they're not tied to a specific element, what are they tied to? Well, think about it. There are no fire spells, or water spells, or elemental spells for that matter in D&D. All of those are filed under one category, evocation. What if instead of being tied to a plane or to an element, Genasi were tied to a specific school of magic? Let's go. The most common Genasi are the elemental Genasi, but arcanists don't call them by this name. In academic circles that study the arcane, these are referred to as evocation Genasi. They're common because added to the influence of just evocation magic, there's also the influence of the planes and the presence of genies meddling in mortal lives. But Genasi of different schools are very much possible, albeit much rarer. The birth of an arcane Genasi not tied to a specific element is much rarer, seeing as it only happens because of prolonged exposure to what is commonly referred to as grand magic. Magic that changes the fabric of reality. Magic that bends the weave with such force that the ripples it leaves behind influence the lives of those that were close to the casting for generations. What mages would qualify as 9th level or above. Just like some evocation Genasi present glowing lines pulsing with evocation magic, other arcane Genasi can present these glowing lines. But because arcane Genasi are born out of exposure to grand magic, these lines manifest instead as the spell that made them Genasi in the first place. Their skin glows with the text of the spell in question, or the magic circles and runes that were used during the casting process. Some arcane Genasi have been used as living spell scrolls because of this feature, some becoming even guardians of specific spells that test the strength of wizards that wish to learn the magic that shines through their skin before letting those wizards copy it off of their skin. Arcane Genasi are also affected by the components used to cast spells. Somatic components in a spell can manifest in the arms, hands, and even feet of the Genasi, giving them an eerie arcane glow, or changing them even more dramatically. Verbal components grant the Genasi an unearthly magical voice, and material components might even manifest as arcane echoes around the Genasi. An arcane Genasi born of a spell that used flowers in the casting might manifest those same flowers around themselves as a sort of arcane reflection of the spell that made them a Genasi. The different Genasi that are born from the casting of a spell are aligned to the school of magic of the spell that was cast. Conjuration is the school of creation, and so Genasi born of magic from this school often emit arcane echoes of their own limbs, with glowing, dreamlike echoes of arms floating behind them. By concentrating their inherent arcane magic, conjured Genasi can make these arcane limbs material, being able to use them in combat, along with their natural set of limbs, making them particularly well suited as martial combatants. Although they have been very famous conjured Genasi spellcasters that use their hand echoes to speed up the casting of somatic components far past what any other caster could muster. Necromancy is the school that holds power over the dead, and so Genasi born of magic from this school are born with entropy and death as a core part of their being. It's common for necromantic Genasis to manifest arcane echoes in the form of will-o'-the-wisps, but it's just as common for whatever limbs were used in the somatic components of the spell that made them into Genasi to be completely skeletal, or for the flesh of that limb to be translucent, revealing the skeleton underneath. Particularly unlucky necromantic Genasi emit a faint smell of rot themselves. Just like the often maligned school of magic necromantic Genasis are tied to, these Genasis are often unfairly maligned too, and many hide their nature so as to avoid the fearful stares and hushed whispers of the general public, and worse, active persecution or accusations of an undead nature. In contrast, abjuration Genasi are often welcome because of the spell that gave them their nature. Abjuration is the school of magical protection, and so abjurative Genasi manifest echoes of translucent shields around their body, most often around the parts involved in the somatic components of the spell that made them into Genasi. Abjurative Genasi can be recognized by the echoey shield circling their hands and arms, or even around their head in the case of somatic components. The reputation of the School of Abjuration grants these Genasis a leg up compared to others tied to more contentious schools of magic. But nothing about being born touched by abjuration magic makes these Genasi more likely to protect or uphold good, and examples of those that have used their perceived benevolence for evil plague history. Transmutation is the school that holds power over magic that seeks to change, and so transmutive Genasi see their forms mutate and shift subtly but constantly. This effect is often contained to whatever limbs were used during the casting process of the spell that influenced them. Hands change color, shape, and apparent age, and apparent species. Their voice changes too, most often going from masculine to feminine to acquiring an indeterminate quality to it, to even sounding more like a choir if verbal components were used in the casting of the spell that made them into what they are. Some transmutive Genasi see their entire forms change instead of specific body parts in just a much more gradual transformation, and some are said to even be able to harness the transmutive energy within to undergo this change at will. Divination is the school that holds power over seeing, across far distances and even towards the future and the past. Genasi affected by this school are theorized to be the inspiration of the common concept across popular culture of the third eye, as they often sport one somewhere on their bodies, from the center of their forehead to the palms of their hands, although some manifest this eye as floating arcane echoes. Depending on the form of divination used in the spell, it's not uncommon for divinatory Genasi to have echoes of constellations floating around them, if the diviner that cast the spell that made them into Genasi used the stars for their divination, although cases of echoes in the form of tarot cards and even dice have been recorded. Enchantment is the school that holds power over magic that seeks to exert influence, and so Genasi shaped by the School of Enchantment are known for two things. The first is their capability to not only blend in with the general population, their manifestation being much more discreet than those of their siblings, but also the ability they have to charm those around them, even without trying. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and the enchanted Genasi appearance is different depending on who is looking at them at any given time. The changes from observer to observer are not dramatic, but details will change to make the Genasi look as appealing as possible to the one observing them, granting them an ethereal attractiveness to anyone that lays eyes on the Genasi. The second trademark of this specific Genasi is their scent, and it behaves very similarly to their looks. Two people will describe wildly different smells when talking about the same Genasi, but both will agree that they found their smell particularly pleasant and attractive. Powerful enchanted Genasi will even manifest arcane echoes in the shape of plumes of smoke, like the one emanating out of a burning stick of incense. The ease with which enchanted Genasi blend in with the general populace makes their existence much easier than that of their siblings, but also makes them uniquely suited to use these abilities for less than savory ways, which has garnered an ill reputation for these Genasi, deservedly or not. Illusory Genasi, on the other hand, are the other side of the coin of enchanted Genasi. Illusion is the school that holds power over magic that seeks to obfuscate and hide, and so illusory Genasi have a very hard time being perceived. Some illusory Genasi have body parts like fingers, or in some rare cases, necks, legs, or even heads be permanently invisible, only a faint outline of them being perceivable to the naked eye. But most illusory Genasi are just hard to describe. It isn't invisibility, people can see them. But when these people are asked to describe details of the Genasi's appearance, the witness have an extremely hard time actually describing anything specific, not managing anything more than the height or general build. The contours of the illusory Genasi are plain to see when you are looking at one. The sound of their voice is clear, but once you tear your eyes away from them, you are simply unable to recall what you were hearing and seeing with any degree of specificity. You knew they were there, you just don't know who they were. Some illusory Genasi have chosen to combat this by wearing particularly outrageous and recognizable outfits, evoking what is called the peacock effect, so that the Genasi may be spared the pain of their loved ones not being able to recognize them. While other illusory Genasis have embraced their forced anonymity, using it like a hidden dagger. Arcane Genasi have acted like living spell scrolls, eminences of the arcane, and some have even been used by particularly evil mages as arcane components for the same type of grand magic that birthed those same Genasi. Some Arcane Genasi set out to discover the spell that was transcribed into their flesh, while they do so to better understand the magic that has formed them into what they are, or because they resent their nature and wish to put an end to the spellcaster that cast it. It is for the Arcane Genasi to decide. Okay, right? That's pretty cool, I think. Living spells? Are you kidding? Genasis as the embodiments of magic? Think about it. As I said, our normal Genasi can happen from genie magic. Why just genie magic though? And this setup makes normal elemental Genasi very possible. They can still come from the influence of the elemental planes from genie magic, and that's what makes them more common than these magic weirdos, but the lore is still very much respected. A shame you can make NPCs of them, or put them in your games, or play them. Just kidding, you can, because they are in the description, hanging out. 3 of the arcane Genasi are ready for you to play for 100% certified Pointy Hat free. And guess what is 2 and goes surprisingly well with all of this? Who could have thought? My Arcane Collection, which has a codex, a 100-page book, all about stuff like this, with like arcane stuff. I wish I had come up with this earlier. And we're still having that sale going, which means that you get a free PDF if you buy the book. Go check it out. But what if you want more of the genie flavor of Genasi? Well, good thing I made a whole genie video, and that one has extra genies. They don't work like you think, and if genies are not for you, how about a completely different type of arcane spellcaster? Go check out my video on wizards and witches. You'll see. All right, see you for the last video of the year. I'm dying, and happy holidays to all of you. Mwah.